We'll have more Liverpool-related stuff later on in the show, but for now, let's just go to the Premier League wide scene, and we'll start with what we knew was going to happen. There was no way that the comparative quiet around Chelsea was going to last, and Sweeney Todd is back with a bang. He has, and his club have, gotten involved with Joah Pedro. And I think an awful lot of Liverpool hearts will have sank when they saw that, because the Pedro to Newcastle links were getting a lot of us excited because we thought of a certain someone coming the other way. But talk to us about what they've done with Pedro, the Gittins thing as well. And there's a few other bits and bobs around Chelsea that I know you want to share with us. I presume these deals are all 19-year contracts, yes?
They never let us down. They're a bit late to the party, Sweeney Todd, this time, but they brought it to the mix. Yeah, absolutely. Sweeney breaks the record for the third time of paying the most money for an uncapped international player, like Bino Gittins from Dortmund. 55 million quid, yeah, for an uncapped international on, like you said, a good old 7-year deal. He also steals a march and smashes Newcastle out the way. As it says on the screen, the deal there for Joah Pedro in excess of 50 million. Taught that it sold 50 million plus 5 million add-ons. And as you guessed again, a good old 7-year contract to boot. But remember, Chelsea aren't stupid with their contracts or don't go beyond a certain amount, as they like to tell us publicly, but a couple of 7-year deals. At one point, they were even talking to United, weren't they, of the premise of Garnacho coming to Chelsea and Nkunku going to Old Trafford, but they realised quite quickly no one could kind of agree a price on all that and put it into the mix that got everyone happy. So that seems to have been thwarted. Even with another 2 attackers coming as well, all suggestions are from various journos, Trev, they still want another attacker. They're still looking in the attacking market, and they might weirdly be plumped for Kudus by Spurs of all teams as well. Not really been the interest in the price tag that West Ham sent, but it looks like Spurs are in serious talks with West Ham for Mohamed Kudus for about 60 million quid or so. So Chelsea will be keeping an eye on that one. But there was an infographic doing the rounds earlier that even without Mudryk, he's set to be suspended potentially for the offences, subject to the appeal, the hearing and all that, that Chelsea still have about 15 attackers on their books that can play like the 4 attacking roles, but they are still looking for another one. I mean, everyone knows Nicholas Jackson is set to depart as well. They've kind of washed their hands of him a little bit, so he'll probably be training at the leisure centre soon enough like Chalobah was, but Sweeney Todd was well and truly woken up.
2 things. Did you see the Nicholas Jackson to Liverpool stories?
Honestly, I don't want to be derogatory about fellow employees, but Steve Smith wrote this, and I rang Greg, and I rang Eddie, and I rang Gags, and I said, I don't care that we haven't got one in existence. Create a HR department right now and organise a public hanging, because that was an absolute disgrace of an article, Stephen, to be honest. It's all opinions, but Nicholas Jackson to Liverpool, get a grip. Come on.
I love Steve. And finally, we've got some breaking news that we have to introduce live in the show. A quote from John W. Henry. This is real news, Dave. He says, I can't stand that Todd Bowley prick. I'm going to get Isak just to piss him off. Fantastic. It's lovely to be able to break news live as it happens on the show. Our next story is Arsenal, who are doing bits, and I think it's 2 midfield recruits I saw of late. We know Thomas Partey is leaving, and it looks like they've eyed up Norgard, who I think is very, very good, I have to say. I think he's a good footballer. Have they looked at the attacking side of things at all? Because that was what they were crying about all year.
It's so bizarre, isn't it? That of all the positions, like you said, Partey has been announced going on a free, so they're sorting the deal with Brentford for Norgard to come in, so that'll be a replacement there. As is on the screen, in or being linked with Eze, because they've been linked with so many left wingers, haven't they, throughout this window, that he's the latest one on the docket. But it does seem to be, from a few journalists, that there is real heat, real traction in this as well. Another centre-half, because he can never get enough of them, isn't he? But actually a player that a lot of Europe's looked at, young Mosquera, the Spanish under-21 international at Valencia, all set to go to Red Bull Leipzig, but apparently an issue around finance, which wasn't really clear. So Arsenal have stolen a move there and look set to bring him in. Again, like you, so everyone's thinking, hello, like, Sesko, Gyökeres, what's going on type of thing. And then Bild had them linked with Ekitike, which you were thinking, okay, could this be the striker? But even today, Fabrizio Romano saying, chat, there's nothing really in that. So Arsenal are looking at a lot of players, just not really a striker seems to be a paramount just yet, unless something breaks this week.
It's so odd. It's so odd. It's like, yeah, their prioritization is odd. Maybe you could read it, Dave, couldn't you? If you were being a bit cynical about it or pessimistic, if you're a Liverpool fan, you could read it that they know they've got at least one deal for one striker in the bag already, and it could be, to be done later in the window. We will see what happens there. Newcastle, Forest and United to wrap up the Premier League. We'll start with Newcastle because they're not exactly having a great old time at the moment. João Pedro was a target for them. We were very much assured, and he seems now to have favoured Chelsea. And they still can't seem to get those other deals they've been linked with over the line. Meanwhile, they can't even put the Isak story to bed, which makes all of us still keep that hope that it could be real, because it would be put to bed by either homegrown journalists on our side or on their side if it wasn't a real thing. But all the journalists from the Newcastle side are saying is, well, here's what we're going to have to offer him to keep him. And all the Newcastle fans are doing is getting salty and looking pretty rattled about the concept of Isak leaving. So it's still a thing. Talk to us about what's going on with their sort of odd inability to sign anyone at the moment.
Yeah, it's really not been a good window for Eddie Howe and his nephew so far, have they, having assumed power at St James's Park? But João Pedro now just adds to the list, doesn't he, Trevor? Brian Mbeumo, Matthias Cunha. Now João Pedro, another attacker that's turned down Newcastle, picked another club and said, nah, you're not for me at all. And maybe, as people speculate, if they're coming in, are they thinking, will I play instead of Isak? Will I be back up? Where will I fit? Maybe that goes into the mix. We'd speculate on that. But essentially, another failure because João Pedro picks Chelsea. I mean, you can see it on the screen there. Newcastle had put a few articles out via their patch journalists as, Newcastle United refused to get into a João Pedro bidding war. Nonsense. We've seen the fee that Chelsea have got him for. Newcastle would have paid that. They just couldn't get the player. Again, it's a third one, even though we know they've got those PSR issues and other bits. But even at the moment, they've still not agreed that fee for James Trafford, the keeper from Burnley. They still don't seem to be making progress on Anthony Elanga, with even suspicions they're going to move on soon because that's not moving forward. So for a club, do you remember that we were told by Newcastle journos was super ambitious, wanting to really move forward? I tell you what, Trev, a penny for Alexander Isak's thoughts right now, because he's obviously going to be looking at the situation. And I've no doubt, because people have spoken about this, he's had talks, on the quiet with Eddie Howe and the club. You doubt he's too impressed, but you just wonder which way it goes. Does it go Newcastle going, well, if we can't get anyone else in, we absolutely can't afford to let Isak go, so the talent's going even further, clambering on that way. But then again, is the player probably not looking and going, well, if we can't attract anyone, we're not going to be competitive, really, are we, in terms of what we're trying to do? And people forget last time Newcastle were in the Champions League, do you remember that horrendous injury run they had and they just sort of dropped down the table? So there's that to factor in as well, and they can't get anyone through the door. You do wonder, especially as we're aware, Liverpool is his favourite option, how that sits right now. But Newcastle are having a disaster of a window right now, salty or not, and that link will not go away until someone completely dismisses it either way.
Yeah, and more on that if and when anything develops on it in any way, shape, or form. We will have the info for you for what it's worth on this show. But there's nothing new now for us to talk about, so we're not going to. It is an interesting one to ponder what's going on at Newcastle and why it is that they can't seem to make themselves an attractive target for footballers, given they have the Champions League ahead of them as well. It's an interesting one, one I'll be watching very closely because I'm interested in the way they're doing things there. Now, you mentioned Anthony Elanga. What's the story with Nottingham Forest? Because I see you've mentioned it here. I heard a Henderson story. I really don't know what that's about. I just thought he was going to be nailed on for joining Sunderland. And then maybe when we talk about Forest, you could finish up the Premier League thing with the little bits of Man United news we have. Again, they're not doing a huge amount either.
No, it's weird for Forest because they have that trio from Botafogo coming, haven't they? And Igor Jesus, the striker, seems to be coming. So that seemed to be a real positive for them to start the business. And then earlier this week, this broke that they'd agreed a deal with Juventus for Timothy Weah and Samuel Bangula. And everyone was like, oh, that seems a good deal and, a good price, cheap and everything. Until Timothy Weah's agent turned around and said, we're not interested in that move. We don't want to go there at all. And Bangula's agent echoed a similar sentiment at the same time. So what was funny was, as it says on the screen there, Forest then come out and say, oh, we're not convinced of the current conditions of the deal. Well, funnily enough, in the current conditions where both players say they don't want to come to your club, those deals tend not to happen, don't they? So, yeah, Forest a bit back to the drawing board on reinforcements for their Europa campaign. One to keep an eye on still, though, Hendo. Hendo apparently has a mechanism in his Ajax contract where he can leave on a free transfer this summer. So people keep saying Sunderland, and you almost expect that to happen, don't you? But the only one we've definitively got as expressing an interest so far is Nottingham Forest from the Premier League. Also, Marseille from France. And apparently, for his pay from Al Ettifaq and how he would have to work in terms of giving tax back, it does actually suit him to not come back to the Premier League because I think it's got to be, like a certain period as a non-dormant. We're not going to go into tax law, but it suits him better that way. But Forest have spoke to Hendo about a return to the Premier League. So it's an interesting window for them. They were the one who signed about 76 players last summer. It seems they're really trying to get numbers through the door, but struggling, as you said there. And right to finish on this, the links between United and Villa, Trev, quite a few. Rashford permanent option, not getting taken up. So that one looks dead. Who will take a punt on Marcus Rashford again? Have to see on that. Ollie Watkins linked with a move to Old Trafford because, a 29-year-old forward he'd probably end up being overpaid for, even though I like Ollie Watkins as a player. Has probably got United written all over it. Even reports this week that Emi Martinez, the Villa goalkeeper, that he's looking for a move and United would be a destination that he would entertain. So just some weird connections between the two clubs there. Also for United and Buemo, they just seem to be, like Brentford have said the price, and they just keep inching like, how about a chalk ice, a Twix, a Star Bar, and just in typical United style, just they go, no, this is the price, as they don't quite get there. It's just absolutely bizarre. But yeah, didn't think there'd be a link or this many links between Villa and United at this stage of the window. But there you go.